All right, welcome back. This is the last. Well, no, they'll do one more. I'll do one more after this. But this is the fire video for Amazon Bowzon. Um, yeah, fire is very similar to cold. It's just the other side of the tree here. So you max all these four things again, and there's different versions that you look into. Again, 1 point in everything here, and then you want to get crit and pierce up until it's at a respectable level. That's kind of it, man. Merc, same thing. Fanaticism. No, I realized people are gonna ask like, why aren't you running conviction on your Merc, right? With Act 2 Infinity, because your elemental damage. And the answer is you could do that. You could very well do that. I personally would rather have the attack speed. That's just me. But you could definitely run the conviction, and you'd be doing increased damage because you'd have more pierce, and also you'd be breaking a couple immunes. So that's definitely an option you can look into. But for me, I just prefer the attack speed, to be honest. Um, so let's look into the different spells here. Um, Again, we have a very similar thing to Cold Arrow. We have Fire Arrow. Doesn't shotgun. It's just a pretty decent spell. It's doing 14 to 17k damage with the current build. So that's awesome. Then we have Exploding Arrow, which is way better than Freeze Arrow, for AoE at least. It's going to be doing the physical damage as well as this 13 to 14k explosion damage. And then finally, we have the Immolation Arrow. So this is the like freezing arrow one. And what it does is it sends out a wall of flame, which does 6,000 to 6,000 damage per second for 2 seconds to anyone in it. And then when it hits, it explodes for about 9,000 damage. So very similar. It also does the physical damage. So let's take a look at how this looks. All right. Yeah, there's kind of a wall in my way here, but let's keep attacking. You'll notice that it does not pierce the same way that the freezing arrow pierced. So this is, again, I don't know if it's a bug. I don't know if it's intentional. The arrow kind of explodes on impact and then disappears. So there's no reason to have perfect pierce, at least if you're going immolation arrow. So that being said, I don't know if this is the arrow you want to use. I haven't really tried the other ones out yet, but we'll try in a sec. But that's interesting. It does not pierce. It just stops on impact. So kind of interesting. And also, this plays a little differently because you definitely want to be further away so that while they're running to you, they're going to be running into the fire trail. So yeah, interesting. Let's try out Exploding Arrow. So it looks like Exploding Arrow has the no, it's piercing. Exploding Arrow is definitely piercing. Oh yeah, Exploding Arrows is great. Look at that. It not only does it pierce every time it pierces, it applies the explosion again. So yeah, honestly, unless there's a bug going on with Immolation Arrow, Exploding Arrow is extremely strong compared and way better just because of the pierce. Again, anytime something can pierce, it's just going to scale infinitely higher than stuff that doesn't pierce. Keep that in mind. Exploding Arrow does your physical damage and then the fire damage in that AoE. So it's pretty strong, especially if it's piercing and applying the explosion multiple times. And then lastly, we have the fire arrows themselves. So these obviously pierce. You would expect them to. Yeah, and they're doing quite a bit of damage. So that's the skill overview. That being said, now that we know that this doesn't pierce, I would just not use this. But that doesn't change anything because you still want to have the synergy, so you still need to max Immolation Arrow. Unless I'm missing something, it's lower damage, it doesn't pierce, and it's a lot more mana. So it doesn't seem like it's something you would want to ever use. Whereas exploding arrow is more damage, it pierces, so it's better at you know, clearing things. Yeah, you really want to use exploding arrow, and the fire arrow even is better because of how much damage it's doing. Really high damage. So let's look at the gear, because I've shown you the play style already. So for this one, we're using a Hellrack. Hellrack is great. It auto mods 5 sockets, um, as far as I can tell. But it comes with sockets. You don't need the slam for sockets. It has 6 to fire skills, which is insane. So you're gonna fill this with fire faucets. So you're gonna get 25 pierce and 25 elemental damage. It also does some cold damage on hit, some lightning damage, some fire damage, and it has enhanced damage. So it's just an all-around really good weapon. It's the best one for fire. And on top of all that, what makes it even more so the better one is that its breakpoint is lower than the Grand Matron bows. It's only 80. Now its max attack speed is lower as a result, but um, we only have to get up to 80 increased attack speed, and guess what? It has 60 on itself. So what that means for us is that now instead of using Nosferatu's coil, we can use an Arachnids to get one more skills. We can use Rising Sun instead of High Lords so that we can get some more Fire Pierce. You'll see with this build we have 47 Fire Pierce, which is a lot. Yeah, and we don't have to worry about attack speed on our bolts. Now the bolts here, you want bow and passive. However, there aren't any in the mod, but I've simulated having an extra 2 with these skills down here. That's that. Andes is the choice just because it's got 2 to all skills. There is no fire helm. Now, it might be the case where using that flickering flame helm is better. You'd have to test that out. You will be getting elemental damage bonus from that. However, you won't be able to get faucets, even though I didn't put any faucets in the Andes. Keep that in mind. Yeah, and 2 wisps as usual, Wartraves, and the same gloves. Pretty much all the same. So that's that's using the Hellrack. And now if I compare it with the Mavinas, which is going to have, oh, I had those cold faucets in the whole time. That's funny. Let's take a look at the full Mavina set. All right. So these have fire faucets. This has a fire faucet. Oh no, these have fire faucets. Never mind, I'm wrong. So these have fire faucets replaced, and if you see, we're at only 70 now, so that means we cannot use the Rising Sun Amulet, unfortunately, unless you were to get 10% in your arrows, which actually we have, so that's fine. We actually need more than 10% though. We need 99. So with this build, we have to use the High Lords, or we have to slam for some other stuff. So that's a bit of a letdown, but it is what it is. Let's go see the damage difference. So right away with the fire arrow, before we were doing, I think it was 14 to 17k. So we're doing much less damage here, definitely. So that kind of sucks. Yeah, it's another 3k we lost here. But again, the Mavinas is cheap. Now Hellrack's pretty cheap too. So keep that in mind. Like you don't need that. Also, with the Mavina's build, your max attack speed is a lot higher than the crossbow, so you will be attacking faster just because the Grand Matron bow can attack faster. It's not the case that what do you call it? The crossbow, it just can't attack at the same speed or rate. So keep that in mind. The exploding arrows are really cool. This guy's immune to cold and fire, but you can see that it's gonna die anyways pretty quickly. That's neat. exploding shot is so strong. But I really like just the regular fire shot is I really like that. It's really tight and the damage is just phenomenal. Like that's like Dragon Din's damage. Really, if I'm being honest. Dragon Din is like 16k I think. But like we're getting to attack from a range, so that's awesome. Yeah, but exploding arrow is clearly the one you want to use for the most part, just because of the AOE potential. Pierce. Um, yeah, things just go down. And remember, we get the regular Nova from Mavina's set, so having that is really good for fire immunes because that Nova it actually does quite a bit of damage. And yeah, this is the fire mage, or the fires on Bowzon. I would say if I had to pick between the two, they're both very similar in damage. Fire comes out on top by a little bit. There are usually more fire immunes in the game than cold immunes, though, so keep that in mind. And I would say if you're using Mavina's, the cold set is better than the fire set. But if you're not using Mavina's, the Hellrack scales way better than the ice bow does. So the ceiling for fire is higher if you're going to be, really pumping out as many high runes into it as you can. Then I think going fire is the way. Those GG slams and all that stuff. But yeah, it's really fun, really quick, really snappy. I just love how essentially compared to the physical one, like physical multi-shot, the fire arrows is just as many arrows almost, or it's enough arrows that it doesn't really matter that you know like it's essentially the same thing. So I really like that. They don't seem to last as long. You can see that they kind of disappear at a shorter range. Multi-shot goes like the whole screen length. These seem to die out around here, and it doesn't seem to matter how far I click. So that's, kind of a bummer, but that's just how the spell is. Not a big deal. Yeah, it's really strong. And then the exploding arrows are just like money on top of it. Like, so I'm gonna do one more with the magic arrow. We'll see how that goes. I'll update you on that when I come back.